What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to the channel.
Yo.
So, Nick, I usually don't brag and boast about my predictions, but sometimes when I get ragged in the comments for saying that Justin Gaethje was going to win this one by decision and saying, how could you possibly think this fight's going to decision? And then it ends up happening just like that. I have to give myself a little bit of a pat on the back. I think what people didn't consider, what they did consider was how explosive and powerful both of these gentlemen are. Right. What they didn't consider was just how tough both of these gentlemen are. And both of them had 3 rounds in them last night and gave us an incredible fight.
Yeah, it's so funny. I've been reading the comments and looking at like just the general reaction to this fight. And everybody's saying, you know, I had such high expectations for this fight and they blew them out of the water.
Yeah.
Like what they put on was actually even better than what the mind could come up with when you tell yourself that Justin Gaethje's fighting Michael Chandler, right? You're like, okay, that's going to be incredible. But it was actually better than what we were anticipating.
It rarely happens that way.
Amazing fight. And I love that it wasn't a dud. It's like whenever we first heard that Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou were going to fight that first time.
My hands started
I was
sweating.
like, are you kidding me? Yeah. Like, this is the best thing ever. It was a total dud. I knew Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler weren't going to let that happen. And, God, the toughness just might be the one thing that both of them have above everything else. As far as all of their skill sets and their attributes, toughness might be the number one thing for both of them. I felt like, you know, one of the coolest quotes that came out of the entire night was that they didn't belong in that era, that they should have been born thousands of years ago fighting in a coliseum to the death. I thought that was really cool because that's sort of the vibe that their fight put out.
Yeah.
I was so blown away with how Justin Gaethje was able to deal with some of the big shots and the adversity. You know, he's kind of known for doing chicken dances and looking like he's all but knocked out, and then coming right back and landing big shots and then turning the tide on his opponents instantly. I really can appreciate guys that go in there and actually leave a part of themselves in the octagon for the sake of the fans, for the sake of the sport. History will go down after that night, and people will always remember and respect and love what they saw out of those two.
Yeah, fight of the night for sure. 50,000 bonus to both of these guys.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, honestly, you could have doubled that amount for both of them, and we all would have been happy. That was one of the best fights I've ever seen, and you got to give credit to Justin Gaethje. Michael Chandler certainly for showing up the way he did, but Justin Gaethje has been saying it all week. Look, I'm going to win this fight, and then I'm next in line for a title shot. And when you have Islam Makhachev, you know, knocking on the door of a title shot and Khabib really pushing him, Javier Mendez, there's a lot of steam behind Makhachev right now. Justin Gaethje could have easily done what he had to do to beat Michael Chandler, banked a couple of rounds, and then kind of just stuck behind the jab and tried to grind out a decision. That's not in Justin Gaethje's DNA. Whether there's a title shot on the line or not, he's going to give you the best performance that he can possibly muster on that night. Same thing for Michael Chandler, regardless of what happens, regardless of where the chips fall. And that's why we love people like Justin Gaethje. That's why we love people like Cowboy Cerrone. I don't even, as I'm sitting here right now, know exactly what Justin Gaethje's record is. But it doesn't matter because we know exactly what he's going to do every time he gets out there. He's going to put his ass on the line, and he's going to try to deliver the best performance that he possibly can for the fans' entertainment. Now, when you look ahead, you got Dustin Poirier versus Charles Oliveira. The winner of that, it would line up time frame wise with Justin Gaethje, provided that he's not suffered any injuries that have been that are undisclosed as of right now. We do know that both Justin and Michael Chandler went to the hospital as a precautionary measure after the fight. Neither one of them did any press. They both went and got checked out. Dana said that was, you know, mostly precautionary because neither one of them said they had any real problems. But when you have a war like that, always the smart and safe thing to do to check out those fighters. And it's as entertaining as it is, you know, you do care about the people, Michael Chandler and Justin Gaethje, as family men and fathers, and you want to make sure that they're okay. So I'm glad that they went and got checked out after giving us such a memorable fight. And so I think as long as Justin comes out of that unscathed after a performance like that, and I know I'm going to sound like I'm a flip-flopper here, but I think you got to give him a title shot. I mean, you can't put on a performance like that against a guy that was just in there for a title shot, top 5 guy, and not get your second shot at the title.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. And, you know, we just saw Islam Makhachev get a first-round victory over a really tough Dan Hooker, and it was a Kimura grip. It was very dominant performance. But it wasn't as exciting, and it definitely wasn't as much of a fan favorite fight, right? So now you have to look at what's better for the sport, what's better for the business, and what's better for the guys in the back. And what Justin Gaethje just did was far more impressive than what Islam Makhachev did, as far as gaining fans, as far as doing things to move the needle for the sport, for the business that is the UFC. So I feel like, even though Islam had a flawless victory, it wasn't near the performance that Justin Gaethje just put out there. And I have to feel like he's going to get a title shot after that. I think Islam Makhachev is probably, even though he's already in the top 5, he hasn't really fought anybody in the top 5. It looks to me like maybe they'll try to line up a Beneil Dariush, Islam Makhachev type of fight to just kind of have somebody locked and loaded in the chamber for after all the dust settles in the title fight, and then maybe Justin Gaethje tries to get the belt from whoever wins that matchup. Either way, it's ridiculous. That fight was the epitome of job security. I don't think. I don't know how many fights Justin has left on his contract. I don't know how many fights Michael Chandler has left on his contract. But no matter how many, they deserve a renew on their contracts and a pay increase and all of that sort of stuff. Because even though Michael Chandler's 1-2 in the UFC right now, he's a great guy for the sport. He's always coming to fight just like that. He's always willing to engage in wars like that, and that's what the UFC likes. Time and time again, we say it on this podcast. It's not about defending an undefeated record at all costs. And that, even if that means giving somebody a tomato can for them to crush and nobody watch, and just so you can move up the needle. Right. Michael Chandler doesn't. I think he could lose 3 more fights in a row and they're still going to keep him on the roster if he keeps performing the way he's performing. And results don't always matter. They're obviously they're one of the most important things, but they aren't the end all be all of the MMA world and of the UFC in particular. And that's why I love it so much. Michael Chandler deserves all the praise in the world. He deserves another top 5 opponent after this one. Justin Gaethje deserves a title shot after that one. They left a big part of themselves in the octagon last night, and that shouldn't be unnoticed. It shouldn't be unrewarded. Yeah. And I was just blown away. What a way to start the card, too. Give Trevor Whitman a little bit of time to relax before his title fights. But, God, I bet his heart rate was through the roof watching Justin Gaethje go.
Oh, my God. Yeah, talk about making Coach nervous in the beginning of the night. But that was, I think, any way you sliced it in any order you put it in, Trevor Whitman was going to have a little bit of a nerve-wracking night. Yeah. But I think Dana let us into a little bit of, inadvertently actually, let us into a little bit of inside information last night. The reporters were able to rope him in a way.
Sometimes they get him.
They got him by, I forget who asked the question, but they said, is there any plans for Beneil Dariush right now? Mm-hmm. And Dana said, yes, there are. And they said, do you care to divulge them? And he said, not at this time. And then another reporter on the heels of that said, will there be a backup fighter for Charles Oliveira, Dustin Poirier? And Dana said yes. And then you could tell in his eyes, like, oh, damn, I might have just stepped in it here, because now we know who it is. Yeah. Because, you could do the math and figure out who it is. And then the guy goes, will that be Beneil Dariush? And Dana just kind of chuckled, and he was like, we'll see. Yeah. So that's a yes. Yeah. Beneil Dariush will be the backup fighter. I'm breaking that news right now if it hasn't already been broken. He will be the backup fighter for Charles versus Dustin. Nice. I don't expect Charles or Dustin to miss weight, and I expect that fight to go on. Yep. So Beneil Dariush will be rewarded probably, if you want to say rewarded, he will probably be facing Islam Makhachev next. If I had to take a guess, I think they're going to make Justin Gaethje fight for the title. Dana said Islam just cracked the top 10, top 5, and so he's got one more to go. I foresee Dustin Charles happening. I foresee Beneil making weight, getting a paycheck, not taking any damage because he's not fighting, and then he's going to turn around and fight Islam while Justin Gaethje fights the winner of Poirier Oliveira, and then the winner of Dariush Islam will fight for the belt after that. That is just my roadmap and the way I see it, and I think Dana accidentally let us in on a little insider information last night. Yeah, and you can always kind of do the math in your head, like, let's see where these guys' paths are, where they're lining up, and it just sort of felt like that would be the right move for all these fighters. And after last night, I think that makes the most sense, and the timing between the fights and everything, that just works out the best. I'd like to see Islam and Beneil get in there early next year, super early next year, and then that'll also help build their names a bit. Yeah. I think that right now, if you throw Beneil Dariush in a title fight against Poirier or Oliveira, that's not a big card. It's not a big thing. But a win over Islam Makhachev helps. And then if Islam Makhachev comes in and beats Beneil Dariush,
that really helps him too. And now we're dealing with two guys that have really good potential as far as being stars. And that's what we're talking about here. Justin Gaethje already has that star quality about him. He already is well known. He's already well respected, and people love watching him fight, especially after last night. I feel like all eyes were on the UFC's event last night, Madison Square Garden. That performance just elevated him to a whole nother level, and that's why you have to put him in there against the winner of Poirier versus Oliveira. And I think that his chances are pretty good. You know, I know Dustin's already beat him once before, but I don't know anybody tougher than Justin Gaethje, and I think that maybe Michael Chandler's the only guy, but I think that his chances are pretty good. Oliveira is obviously going to be the favorite going into all those fights, and I think Poirier probably would be as well. But Justin Gaethje's definitely the number one contender in my opinion.
Yeah, I would love to see the Justin-Dustin rematch.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be an incredible fight. Nick, I mean, obviously we know what happened. Dustin was able to clip him and get his number, take him out of there. But Justin Gaethje could have just as easily done the same thing. And I think that Justin Gaethje versus Dustin 2 sells like you wouldn't believe. I think if Oliveira gets over Dustin, making Oliveira versus Justin, that fight works all day long. I agree with you. Beneil Dariush is an excellent fighter, but he's not a household name yet. A win over Islam Makhachev certainly puts him in that category. Islam is his own entity. He's got all of Khabib's fans riding behind him, which is a massive fan base.
Right.
So you get the best of both worlds. Either you take that guy out and you roll with his thunder, or he beats you and he rolls right into a title shot. That's a mega event. Maybe you get like Russia versus Brazil in an absolute war of a title fight. So there's all kind of fun stuff going on at 155 right now. But I think what we just laid out is the only way to do it that's actually somewhat fair and favorable to Beneil Dariush. He's got to be the backup guy. He is the third-ranked guy in the division. He should be in there fighting for a title if Poirier is not in there fighting for a title. So you let him be the backup, then you give it to Justin, let Beneil fight Islam, let that all sort out. But either way, what an incredible fight between Michael Chandler and Justin Gaethje. And like you said, I think Chandler's 1 and 2 in the UFC, but that's only because he's been fighting title fights and top 5 guys. If you brought him in to be a contender, he'd be 3-0 right now. So I think you have to factor that in. He came to be right at the top and compete. He was the backup for Justin Khabib before he ever even had his first fight in the UFC. So that shows you where they placed him as far as what caliber a fighter they thought that he was right out of the gate.
Yeah, I really think Michael Chandler has a bright future in the UFC still. I know he's not going to be here for a whole hell of a lot of fights, but all exciting fights, all big fights, and don't discount him potentially getting a fight with Conor McGregor, the red panty night that is still very real in the UFC. I think Michael Chandler, Conor McGregor would sell really well just as a big fight, not a title fight or anything like that. They both have a ways to go for their in title contention again. I'd love to see Michael Chandler with Rafael Fiziev.
Oh, wow.
I'd love to see Michael Chandler in there with Bobby Green. I think these are the types of fights where maybe Michael Chandler's not going to be a champion, but he's going to be one of those guys that's going to put on amazing fights and bring whoever he fights. If they're not as big of a star as he is right now, he's going to help elevate them. And if they are as big of a star or bigger like Conor McGregor, then he's going to rise to the occasion, and you're going to have a mega event. Michael Chandler's a star. I think he's going to help with pay-per-views moving forward. And however long he's in the UFC is going to really appreciate having him around.
That is for sure.
Yeah.
Guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Drop us a comment and let us know what you thought about the fight of the night last night, Gaethje Chandler. Was it fight of the year so far for you? We always love chatting with you in the comments. And guys, if you listen to audio podcasts, check Nick and I out there as well. The Barnhill Brothers podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. We appreciate a listen there as well. So guys, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.